Okay, so this should be the last tutorial regarding this final project. So here's the skirt, and the history is deleted. The transforms are frozen and cleared out. Okay, so for the text, where we go from here, let's switch this to modeling and create type. And here's the create type. It's the same process that we did for the Adidas project. So here it is, and automatically you should be in the attribute editor. If not, do so. Now we're gonna choose the third tab, type 1, and it says over here type 1, and we're gonna scroll up like how I just did right now and choose under text tab. Before we were in geometry, be in text tab. For the font size, type in 1.5 and hit F as in Frank for our camera to be able to focus and orbit around the object. F as in Frank. Next, under this drop down window, we're going to look for dancing script. Hit enter. Now I'm gonna go in here. I'm gonna type in your quote. Yeah, there you have it. Next, so we did that, right? Next, let's go into geometry tab, third tab. And we're gonna go down to, I'm gonna collapse the deformable type. Gonna go into extrusion and extrusion distance 0.1. Then under bevels, enable bevel, and it goes out of control, which is fine. We'll fix that under the other settings, which is in bevel profile, right here. Under bevel profile, we're going to type in 0.009 for bevel distance. Bevel distance is 0.009. Bevel offset is 0.01. Again, bevel offset is 0.01. Bevel distance is 0.009. And just to explain, if you look closely and you zoom in, we have these nice tight bevels controlled, and how much it falls off, all of that is within these parameters. Okay. So for example, I just showed what that was, but if I, let's say, undo and undo, and type in 0.009 for the bevel distance, like I said, you know, it pulled it in, but it still has this weird stuff going on. Like I said, the bevel offset 0.01, and that brought it back in. So if I go 0.02, made it tighter. 0.0, say 5, made it even more tighter. That's the offset. So let's bring it back to 0.01. Broaden it back out. So I'm just showing this as an example, instead of just telling you to punch in numbers. Let's say bevel distance. If I made it 0.01, it raised it up some more, which is kind of nice. Maybe we'll just keep that. Yeah, why not? So just make it 0.01, 0.01. A little extra. I mean, it's not much, but it's, you know. Under the bevel divisions, if I zoom in, we have more than enough divisions. Let's say bring it down. Well, let me undo that. Well, we don't need this much, especially since the text is small. So drop it down to 4. Alright, so we got that. Next thing, what to do? Let's center the pivot, because the pivot point right now is at the 0 marker, at the 0, 0 coordinate in the center of the 3D world. If you look underneath, you zoom out, it's in the center. We want this center to be in the center of the object. So like I said, center pivot, the hotkey is right there, which is also modify center pivot. Alright, so we centered the pivot. Right now, I want to hide the skirt, which is that one. I'm going to select it again. And I want this to move this into the center of the 3D world. So we can add our deformers and just to add placement, to make the placement easier. And it's just to clean it up in general. So let's, what we're going to do is, I'm going to go up here. I'm going to click on this tab where it looks like a magnet right here. And I'm going to click that. That will turn the handle into a circle in the center. That means that with this on, when I move this, it will snap to the grid lines, like that. You'll see and feel it, that it will snap to the grid lines. So all I did was just move it across in the X, which is this handle right there. It's still on, so make sure to turn it off. Alright, so we moved it, now it has some data. So I'm gonna freeze the transform on that, clear it out, which is not the same as freezing the history or deleting the history. So I'm gonna go again to show modify, freeze transforms, transformation. And also make sure you turn that off. Alright, so that part is good. Next, we need to add our bend deformer, which you've been using a lot for the modeling of the skirt. We're going to go under animation, animation menu. Make sure to be an animation. And deform. Scroll down to non-linear. Again, that's deform, non-linear, bend. And you'll probably recognize this. This is the handle. And the attributes for that handle is, for example, let's say under curvature, inputs curvature, not this curvature, this curvature. Let's say I put in 90. See how it warps it? I mean, it's kind of neat, but we're gonna want to aim it the right way. So for example, rotate 90. It's gonna rotate it that way. I turned it this way. And then rotate Z 90, which it flipped it over, made it turn this way and this way. Now we have the proper bend action. That's how we got that. Again, that's 90 and 90. That's the only thing you mess with. And the curvature at 90. We leave the curvature at 90. We want it is at 90 because it's half of a 180. 180 is half of a 360, but we want half of a 180, which is 90. And basically it's gonna make its own rotation. We're gonna rotate around it, around the skirt. Anyway, so make it 90. We just need a 90 bend, no more than that. Anything more and it starts to crunch in. For example, you put in the whole 180. This is not readable. That's why I just make it 90 so it's nice and wide. Like that. That's the reasoning behind that. Alright, so that's done. Now, we have that. We have that. Do not delete the history. Do not delete the history. In this case, we don't delete the history. So we got that and that. We're gonna select both of those. And we're gonna go, we're gonna group it, which should be group, Control G. And we just grouped it. Okay. Let's name this text group. And now I need to turn the skirt back on. So in order to properly place the text group. Okay. So one of the things do I notice? Okay, what should I do? Now if I try to, for example, if I try to rotate it like this, we don't want that. I want it to rotate, for example, you don't have to do anything, I'm just showing the example. Like that. So the way we're going to do that is, first thing, let's turn spacebar, panels, layouts, 4 panes. I'm just bringing back my default settings, panels, orthographic, top. I need to show the grid, which is this one right here, right underneath panels. It just helps me to see more clearly. Spacebar, I'm gonna go in here. Alright, so I want to place my move handle over here. The way I'm going to do that is I'm going to first click on the grid snapping right here again. Then I'm going to press D as in David. which allows me to move my pivot point. So now it's you'll see where after I pressed D as in David, this handle, I'm just gonna move it carefully like there. There's a little snap in move to the grid. Right here is pretty good. Now I'm gonna make sure to let go of that to deactivate the grid snapping. After I deactivate the grid snapping, I need to deactivate the move pivot point, the adjustment of the pivot point, where it gives me a free reign to place the pivot point wherever I want. I need to turn that off. I'm just gonna hit W and see how it changed. Alright, so now it has a center pivot point. Alright. From here, let's move it. Okay, I just undid that. Let me turn on the grid snapping again. Okay, now I'm gonna click and hold, and I'm gonna move, and snap. That was just the grid snapping turned on to snap it to the center of the 3D world. Now I'm gonna turn the grid snapping off. But as you can see, there's data in my channel box. I don't want that. I just want it cleaned out. So I'm gonna freeze transformer again. Let's clear it out. Again, freeze transformers, modify, freeze transformations. Spacebar, spacebar. Ooh, what just happened? Oh, that's not good. Oh, what was that? Huh. That was weird. It just glitched and I hit Control Z and it went back to normal and it's still in the right coordinate system. Interesting. Okay, well, still worked. So if you see that happening, just do Control Z and it'll snap back into place. Okay. Alright, now I noticed that it's kind of, it could be a little bit bigger, the text. So what I want to do is I want to grab the text group and under the scale X, Y, and Z, I'm going to type in 1.25. Again, that is 1.25 and hit enter. Make it nicer and bigger. And see how the hemisphere is much larger now, whereas before it was tighter. That's the reason why we made it bigger. So it gives you some freedom, where since we made a text group, the group where we grouped the bend deformer and the geometry mesh as a group, now we can go in and just do an additional scaling and it doesn't affect it in a bad way. The other thing too is, the reason why you group the mesh and the bend deformer together is because they have to go together. One could argue that you could just might as well delete the history on this, and then the modification of this half circle will now be locked in if I delete the history. But I did not delete the history because I made some additional changes, and having the history for this text mesh helped out a lot. So for now, just do not delete it. At the very end, when you're completely happy, then you can delete the history. Anyway, I'm just explaining the reasoning behind what we're doing. Alright, so we did we did that. Make sure to always grab the text group from now on. Now Oh, right. Right. Let me see if it'll goof up now. If I freeze transform. Oh, look at that. It does goof up. Huh. Yeah. Don't freeze transform. In this situation, it's just too much trouble to break apart what's happening. Anyway, so I froze transform because I saw the 3 over here. And I saw the numbers here. I tried to freeze transform and it just glitched out on me. But I'm just gonna leave it alone. Alright, whatever. So let's roll it up. How about yay high is good. Spacebar, spacebar. Maybe right around here? Yeah. So right around here. You know. And the Y, that's basically 3.5. You can just type in 3.5 if you want. Well, maybe I don't. Yeah, I want a little bit higher. Make it 3.574. But yeah, high. The reason behind it is that when it's animated, we want to have clearance between the objects, so it'll be able to read better. Alright, and that again is that we're selecting the text group. The group, exactly the group. Alright, so we did that. Now, final part, the animation. First, let's check our preferences. Windows. Again, Windows. Settings, preferences. Preferences. Here it is. Let's go down to animation. Now let's go down to time slider. Make sure your frame rate is set to 24. Make sure your playback is set to 24 times 1. And you can set your update view to all. Our playback. Let's make the playback here 1 to 70. Play animation start end 1 to 70. Hit save. Now on frame 1, I'm happy with this. I'm gonna hit S as in Sam to set a keyframe. On frame 70, on the rotate Y, we're going to type in 360. After I type in 360, hit S. Ooh, I hit A by accident. Hit S as in Sam. Okay, so again, that's on frame 70. And on frame 70, rotate Y is 360. Frame 1, rotate Y is 0. So the reasoning behind that is the rotate Y rotates it this way, or it will orbit. 360 is the number chosen because 360 is a full rotation. So if you go back to frame 1 and I scrub, there you have it. Now I'm gonna play it. Alt, ALT, and V as in Victor, or on the Macs it is Option and Victor, which will play it. So as you can see, it kind of has this pause. I mean, I'm okay with it. So, but if you do not want that pause, you select the group, and we have to go into the graph editor, Windows, Animation Editors, Graph Editor. Again, that is Windows, Animation Editor's Graph Editor. Pop it open. Here's our graph editor that we discussed in the past. Here's the curve. That's the rotation. Rotate Y, we select that. And then I'm gonna left click, hold, and drag and marquee select everything. And so what this means is that there's a little bit of a stall and it accelerates. And then there's a bit of a stall. That's what this curve means. Beginning, bit of a stall, end. On frame 70, bit of a stall. If you want to just make it all one constant pace, you click on this button. Linear tangents. It will flatten it out. Then you could exit out. Let's see what it does. Alt and Victor, or Option and Victor. So it's a consistent pace, no pause. I can rotate it around like that, which is fine. Oh, I notice I don't see my cube compass. So if I hit, oh, actually if I go panels, perspective. Alright, this is my camera. Spacebar. Panels, perspective. I need my cube. Hold on. Windows, preferences. View cube, it's on. It doesn't want to show in the extra camera. Whatever. Okay. W. Alright, I'm gonna just, yeah, this is the front. Alright, I'm gonna hit Alt 5 to see in wireframe, or Option 5. Spacebar. Alright. Let me get rid of this grid. So that's that. Now, let's do some basic lighting. First light is you're gonna want physical sky. Let me delete that one. Delete. You know what? No, let's not delete that one. Here's your physical sky that we're gonna make. Again, that is under our node, lights, physical sky, not the sky dome light, the physical sky light. In the previous project, we were using the sky dome light. We're going back to using the physical sky light, the one that we used for the Adidas project. You click on that, this will pop up. Let's go to the attribute editor. For the attributes for this physical sky, intensity, the default is at 1, leave it alone. Exposure, we're going to set to 1.75 because I think the default is at 0, but we're going to set to 1.75 because it needs to be a lot brighter. I don't want to do a render right now because it could corrupt my screen capture. Well, let me hit the render settings. Let me see if I can just try to... Oh, I got GPU rendering. Let me turn that off. Let's set this back to 3. Read that. 2, 1. Okay, fine. Let me try risk a render. If I go, I really don't want to risk a render. It's gonna. Alright, so view, test resolution, 50%. Should be small enough. So if I set the exposure back to 0, let's do a quick render. Please don't crash on me. Please don't crash. Alright, 2 seconds. Good. Alright, so. Alright. So. Alright, 3 seconds. Alright. Alright, so, let me hide that. Alright, so I hid the other lights. Alright. This guy don't like. So this is with the default. Right? It's pretty dark. But if I set it to 1.75, it immediately brightened the whole entire scene. Anything brighter is going to start to blow out. So let's save it. Before, after. Big difference. Before, after. And the shadows is dark. You know what? Let's set the shadows to be more of a lighter tone. Maybe right on there. Let's do a quick render. See if you look. Before, after. Alright. It's definitely lighter. Let's make it a little bit more lighter. Yeah, there we go. So right around here, make it lighter. Reasoning behind it is that the final render animation I showed you, the shadow was pretty saturated. So this will help out, make it lighter. Now that it looks nice too. Next, samples. You want to set it to 2, not 1 but 2. 2, it does something to the shadows where it makes it more concentrated and it just looks better. Set it to 2. I thought it used to just get rid of the noise, but it does something more as well. So set the shadow samples to 2. Not the volume samples, the shadow samples right here. And the shadow color, more grayish right around here. And inside here. So for example, you could play around the ground, the sky, the sun. And you kind of choose what you want. Next, area light. Let's unhide that. Alright, this area light. That's basically just a support side lighting, secondary lighting to get the nice little shine over here that you saw in the previous render. As a matter of fact, let's pull that up. So here's a previous render. So you see this nice little edge lighting. That's from the no. The area light it gave it more lighting on the sides, not this rim light, but on the sides here and here. It's hard to say right now, but that's what it does. Anyway, so let's show what it does. Attribute editor. Now for this area light right here, this guy right here, his placement is more or less negative 18 on translate X. Translate Y, you could set it to say a 6.5. Translate Z, you could set it to a 7. And super importantly, rotate Y is negative 65. The scale, you could just set it to 10 on all X, Y, and Z, 10. Now, attribute editor, intensity is the default at 1. Do not mess with intensity. Just on the exposure, you want to crank that up to say 11.5. Anything after 12 it starts to get blown out, or 13 starts to get blown out, even at 12. So 11.5. And samples to 2. The shadows, color, let's bring that up a little. Just a little. Alright, so intensity 1, exposure 11.5. Soft edge, that's the other one. Set it to 1. You get softer feathered shadows if you crank the soft edge from 0 to 1. Samples to 2. Shadow color, a little bit more brighter than black. Now let's do a quick render. Render, update full scene, boom. You see how we got that? Before, after. Save. Next, let's turn on the other area light. Hit H to show. Basically, it's the direct opposite of him. His setting is 18, 6.5, 7. Rotate X is 0, rotate Y is 65. Scale X, Y, and Z is 10. Again, that's 18, 6.5, 7, and rotate Y at 65. Next, the attributes. Same attributes. Intensity at 1. Color is white. Exposure at 11.5. Soft edge, crank that up to 1, which gives us soft feathered shadows. Samples to 2 to get better shadows. And the shadow color, let's bring that up a bit. Right around there. Let's see what that does. Alright, so this is before. Update. It kind of blows out a bit, but we can fix that in post. Let's save it. Before, after. So before, after, and after. I kind of like that, but once you add that, it kind of blows out a bit, but we can fix that. Alright, next, our rim light, which is here and here. That would be that one. It's behind. This one is big. He is basically, his coordinates are basically, translate X is at 0. Translate Y is at about a 9. Translate Z is about a negative 10. And rotate X is 0, rotate Y is 180. That's how we got the back facing. And the scale X is more or less 25. Scale Y is more or less 9. Scale Z is more or less 13. And the reason why this one is so huge is so that it can overlap and, overlap the geometry, the model. And that's how we got this effect. And this wide shadow. over here going like this, like that. Alright, so for his shadows, speaking of his shadows, let's do a render. And there you have it. Nice. So before, after, and we got that contact shadow. This how we need to work on that. So let's do a save, before, after. Under the shadows, let's give it a color, more of a lighter purplish color. See if that helps. Okay. And more on the so you could work on that. Oh, and the one important thing is the color. Set it to a bright yellow. That's how I got that nice kick here and here. Give a nice color contrast. That shadow bothers me. Okay. Anyhow, the shadow color, I made it a little more purplish, light purplish. You could play around with it. Or maybe even just knock off the soft edge. That didn't do much. Let's turn it back on. Alright, so next important thing is finally the light linking. Alright, so light linking. Windows, relationship editor, light linking. Okay, Windows, relationship editors, light linking, light centric. Remember this one? So basically, alright, the issue is the backlight, which is area light 3 in the outliner, just to verify. Now in the relationship editor, let me select area light 3. Okay, let me see what else I got here. Let me double check my notes. Alright, 3, 4, okay. Area light 3, 4. You know what, first, before I make things confusing, we're gonna select the area light 1. And we select the area light 1. Okay, make sure you select it. You can let go and select it just to help refresh. And we're gonna click here so it does not influence the text. We don't want it to influence the text because it's blowing it out right here. You see how bright it is? Area light 2. We do not want it to influence the text. Area light 3. We do not want it to influence the text. And finally, area light 4. For area light 4, basically it's the same. You know what? First, let's do a render. Let's see what that did for us. Alright, good. So before, the text is blown out, but with the help of the relationship editor, making it not influence the text, not influencing the text, not influencing the text, the sky dome light, the physical sky, do not mess with that one. Leave that guy alone. Only 1, 2, and 3 for now. So, before, after. Now, so that was area light 3. Area light 4 is basically the same light. I just duplicated it. I'm going to show it now. So, here he is. That's him right there. Area light 4. Let me name him, I could just name him backlight duplicate, just so that it's not confusing. Or maybe pull him back a bit, like that. So his coordinates are basically the same thing, but just pushed back in the translate Z. So maybe like -12, if you want, just to help see it more clearly. The reason why I made a duplicate of area light 3, which is him right here, which is now the duplicate is named backlight duplicate, is that I want to only give backlighting specifically just for that text, which is here. So the backlighting, you see how you got these glows at the rear? That's from that backlight, blasting light onto the text and onto the text only. So here's my backlight, my relationship editor, which again is Windows, relationship editors, light linking, light centric. Anyway, backlight duplicate. Alright, or it looks like it already knows. Right, so it only has, my backlight duplicate is only highlighting my text. Everything else is not. Everything else is not lighting my text. Well, except for the physical sky. Physical sky is lighting my text. So, backlight duplicate is only lighting the text. Let's see what that looks like. Alright, see? Now we got that light. Now, for the rear light, the backlight duplicate, which is, its specific job is to light the rear of the text, he is going to have exposure of, say, a 14. Just a 14. Yeah. And that's about it for that. Let's close that out. Let's look at the hyper shade. Alright, edit, delete unused nodes, get rid of junk that's not in use. Uh-oh, let me undo that. Edit, undo. Edit, edit, undo. Alright, good. Forgot about that. Let me grab my text. Let me assign my text shader. Edit. Okay, now I'm good. Alright, let's go over the text shader. The text shader is basically this pink shader. All it is a AI surface shader, which again is under shader, under Arnold shader, AI standard surface shader. Let me delete that. So that's what it was. Shader, AI, standard surface. All we did was choose a nice bright pink color. I chose pink because I think it'll go well. And last thing is the specular, the weight is at 0.2. We drop down the weight because that will also drop down how reflective it is. We don't want it to be super shiny and it just doesn't look nice. So drop it way down to a more of a diffused and very soft, glossy, barely noticeable reflection. 0.2. Roughness. That also influences the specular, which it goes well together with the weight and roughness to rough out the specularity. So that's what it was. 0.2 and 0.5. And that's all we messed with. As for the skirt, this is the same color as our image reference, but a little bit brighter. So in this setting, it's hue saturation value. You could set to say at 207. For a hue saturation, you could set to say a 0.64. The value you could set to a 0.174. That's more or less the ballpark of this color. And the skirt, he has basically, let me tone this down too. Nothing on the specular. We want nothing shining on the specular. Just a nice matte color. That's why we cranked everything down for the specular. For the skirt. Finally, the wall shader, infinity wall shader. Like I mentioned before, you're going to want the background color, not the scene color, background color. When you choose background color, you get to choose what color it is. And that's how we got that. If you want specifically this pink color, that is 260 for the hue, 0.48 for the saturation, or basically 0.49 for the saturation. The value is at 0.734. And diffuse, yeah, you could turn it on. In the right, yeah, you could just leave that alone. Yeah, these are all the default setting anyway. So that's basically the infinity shader. That's pretty much all of it. Let's do a quick render. And there you have it. So that's pretty much it. Yeah, so that's about an hour. Alright, so could continue this in class, and good luck. Bye bye.